Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's panel discussion, Innovation and the University, a National Perspective. I'm your moderator, Saurabh Vishnubhakat. I'm a professor at Texas A&M University in the Law School and in the College of Engineering. And I'm proud and quite delighted to introduce our featured speaker for today, Director Andrei Iancu of the United States Patent and Trademark Office. In his role as the Undersecretary of Commerce for Intellectual Property and Director of the USPTO, Mr. Iancu provides leadership to one of the largest intellectual property offices in the world, with more than 12,000 employees and an annual budget of over $3.5 billion. He also serves as the principal advisor to the President through the Secretary of Commerce on domestic and international intellectual property policy matters. Prior to joining the USPTO, Mr. Iancu was the managing partner at Irell and Manella LLP, where his practice focused on intellectual property litigation. Mr. Iancu has also taught patent law at the UCLA School of Law and has written and spoken publicly on a variety of intellectual property issues. Prior to his legal career, Mr. Iancu was an engineer at Hughes Aircraft Company. Mr. Iancu holds a JD from the UCLA School of Law, an MS in mechanical engineering, and a BS in aerospace engineering, both from UCLA. Undersecretary Iancu, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Professor, and great to be with you, and great to be with the university and the entire innovative community. Really, I visited all of you beforehand. Wish we could have done this in person as well, but at least through the wonders of modern technology, we can stay connected virtually. With your permission, I will say a few things to put our discussion in context, and then I look forward to any questions you and the audience might have. Does that sound like a plan?
Okay. Please
do. Obviously, before I even get to that, I should mention that the USPTO and Texas A&M share a strong partnership in a whole variety of ways, but somehow they all come down to you, Saurabh. I don't know if everybody knows, but the professor here launched his career. I think he launched his career at the USPTO. He was the legal advisor to the agency's first two chief economists. He did a lot of things while he was in that role, but even beyond that, once you left and you went into academia. And by the way, I don't know anybody would move away from North Virginia and the capital region, but you were one of those people. Nevertheless, you stayed in touch, and you're always involved with the innovation community, with the USPTO, other government agencies, the FTC and SEC, and you submit comments and always help out, and that is so incredibly valuable. And not to mention that you've also helped the school build one of what's been recognized as one of the top 10 IP law programs in the United States. And one of the largest, not just one of the best, but one of the largest IP programs in the United States. And that's really phenomenal. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the critically important role of Michael Young when it comes to innovation and the leadership of your school. My understanding is that he just concluded 5.5 years as the 25th president of Texas A&M. But I'm sure that that was important work for him and the university. But as far as I'm concerned, the much more important role is that he serves on the USPTO, on our National Council for Expanding American Innovation. We'll get into a lot more details about this National Council, but Mr. Young is a prominent member of that. He spoke at our inaugural event and provided really inspirational comments. Let me read you the comment that we highlighted from his speech. He said, "Just as universities benefit from an interdisciplinary approach to finding solutions, our nation is advanced by drawing on the intellects and the ideas of people from a wide array of backgrounds and experiences." And that is so true, and why we are so focused on expanding the American innovation ecosystem and diversifying it in all sorts of ways, demographically, geographically, both in the inventor space, the entrepreneur space, the education space, and so on. So we'll talk about all that, but before we do that, I want to put some things in context, historical context, and talk about the importance of innovation, the importance of IP to that innovation, and how to get more of the same in this country. So first of all, let's talk about the importance of innovation. If you think about human history, and in the grand span of human life on this planet, it goes back tens of thousands or millions of years, depending on how you count and where you start counting. But more importantly, humans have been organized in civilized society for certainly thousands of years, if not over 10,000 years. And there have been societies across the globe, the ancient Greeks and the ancient Chinese and the Romans and the Aztecs and on, across the globe and across time. And yet, despite all that civilization, 200 years ago, if we had to meet like this, obviously video was out of the question, but we probably would be meeting in some big auditorium that was either really hot or really cold, depending on what the outside temperature was. Lighting would have been provided by candlelight. If we had to send a message, we would have to send carrier pigeons. If you wanted anesthesia, if you needed anesthesia, your best bet would be like a shot of whiskey, probably. And that was just 200 years ago. In other words, the state of the human condition 200 years ago was about the same as it was in antiquity. But look at us now. Look at the unbelievable progress that's been made in just 200 years. And one has to ask, how come? Why is it that in these 200 years, we have made so much unbelievable progress, despite the fact that very little, if perhaps no meaningful progress was made for the entire existence of civilized human society? What happened 200 years ago? Obviously, lots of historical events, but for our purposes here, I believe that the most meaningful and impactful event that changed the course of the human condition is the United States Constitution and the inclusion in it of the Intellectual Property Clause, which guarantees to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. So, for the first time, the establishment of a formal and modern and democratized copyright and patent system. Since then, innovation was democratized in the United States. You did not have to be friends with the crown. You didn't have to be rich. Anyone could invent, at least according to the system of laws, and everyone could protect their inventions and other creations. That set into motion dynamic competition that allowed improvement upon improvement to create in the end this explosive exponential growth of which we're still in the midst of. So there's no question of the benefit of human innovation as protected by the American IP system. We see it, we live it, and we see it in the statistics too. Economic studies from our chief economist. I don't know if Saurabh, you worked on this while you were here, but I'm sure you're familiar with our studies of IP-intensive industries that show that about 50% of the US GDP comes from IP-intensive industries. More importantly, for our purposes, employees, workers in IP-intensive industries earn average wages of 50% more than folks who work in non-IP-intensive industries in the private sector. The impact of the issuing of the first patent for a startup is employment growth by 36%, 36 more percentage points than without that first patent, and the impact on sales growth is even higher. So the economic impact is absolutely crystal clear. It's also important for the development of each individual, their own, obviously their wages, but also career opportunities and job satisfaction and the like. Important for the companies that these folks work in, important for the communities they live in, and obviously for the United States. And yet, despite the fact that the benefits are so clear, and despite the fact that the system is democratized ever since our Constitution, and the laws are obviously democratic, despite all that, innovation in the United States remains highly concentrated. And it's concentrated demographically and geographically. Geographically, we know it exists, innovation is very strong in certain communities around the United States. Silicon Valley is a very good example, but there are obviously others, some more established than others. Texas is obviously in various places developing a number of innovation hubs. Austin is a very good example. You're taking away all sorts of people from California, so you must be doing something right in that respect. But nevertheless, there are vast swaths of the geography of the United States that does not participate nearly to the same level. Demographically, we know that we just recently, Chief Economist again, just recently did a study of women inventors and concluded that in 2019, only 13% of inventors named on US patents are women, which is an improvement of the 12% we measured in 2016. But boy, we have a long ways to go, and we really need to get there much faster. So all that has to change. We must diversify the innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem. We have to expand it, and we need to do it right away. To do that, I believe that there are three components that are minimally necessary to this. There are other components, but at a very minimum, we need government, we need academia, and we need industry to work together towards a common set of goals. They need to work in partnership with each other, with specific goals and specific strategies, so that we can actually make a difference and get beyond just mere talk of these issues. Talk is important, and we're doing this right now as we speak. And these are important issues to surface and discuss, but we need to get beyond talk. So to do that, we have established recently the National Council for Expanding American Innovation. It has leaders from academia, such as Dr. Young from Texas A&M and others. It has CEOs from major companies, from high-tech to biotech to auto manufacturing and everything in between. It has government leaders, and it has some small business representation, venture capital representation, and so on. And this council is charged with helping us create a national strategy for expanding American innovation. I asked the council three things: to be specific, number one, about the problems that exist and the problems of lack of diversity exist at many different points along the path of inventorship, in education, in lower school education, in university education. They exist in employment. They exist in access to capital, and I could go on. Let's be specific as what the problems are at each one of these specific points, and then let's be specific about the proposed solutions. That's number two. And number three, Let's be specific about the measurements. We need to hold ourselves accountable. We need measurable results. So let's be specific about how we're going to measure ourselves and our performance. And it's okay if the measurements show that we're not doing something right, we're not making enough progress. That's a good thing, because then we can learn and change tactics and adjust and do better. But we need to be held accountable through measurable, through metrics, and we need to identify what those might be. So I'm looking forward to hearing from the results of the work of the Council over time. As I've mentioned, universities play a hugely important role in this, obviously for education in their own system, in the lower schools, in their neighborhoods and communities that they work with, but also with the generation of creation of mentors and role models that the next generation can look up to and tap into. So let me stop there. There's a lot more specifics we can talk about, but I want to open it up to questions from you, Saurabh, and anyone else in the audience.
Terrific. Thank you, sir. So as questions start to come in through the chat, let me begin for the moment with our students. We have of the 1L class here at Texas A&M School of Law, over 24 law students, roughly 1 out of 7 in our 1L class have STEM degrees. And the same is true of our 2L class. Our College of Engineering, where I teach as well, also have joint degree programs available in law and engineering. And so what I'd like to ask you is, apart from the sort of obvious things, IP coursework, our USPTO certified patent and trademark clinics, how can our students best prepare themselves for their professional role in supporting innovation and in translating among the communities of academic research and private sector innovation and law and business?
So let me first ask you a question. People always ask me, why do you answer a question with a question? To which I say, why do you ask? But anyway, so what type of students are we talking about? Law students or undergrads as well?
So law students primarily, but I know we have a number of students from our College of Engineering, both undergrad and graduate students. So if I could ask you first about the law students and then the engineering side.
Sure. So let me start then with the law students. Look, what I would say first and foremost, especially in your first year, and I apologize, I have kids as well who are of age that would be appropriate for law school now. The first thing I would say is study hard, get good grades. But that's the parent in me. But beyond that, obviously you have to do that. If you want to be to participate in the IP system and innovation system, obviously take the right relevant coursework. But get involved with the IP community. There is so much going on, and it is so much fun and so exciting. The program we're doing now is just an example. There's many IP programs, communities that get together live usually, but now during the pandemic, they're still getting together by virtually, and connect with folks. You'll find that the experienced practitioners are eager to talk to the recent graduates. And beyond just going to the programs, volunteer yourself to participate, to be on a committee. Many of these associations have young leadership committees, new leader committees for folks just like yourselves who are in law school or about to graduate or recent graduates. Get on those committees and try to achieve leadership roles on those committees. So stay involved. Stay involved with us here at the USPTO. We are America's innovation agency, as it says behind me. At least we say that, so it's got to be true. But stay involved with us. We have lots of programs. Look at our website, uspto.gov. You'll see our programs there. There's always something new. It's a super exciting field. And I would say beyond that, be a mentor. The fact that you're in law school, the fact that you're at a top law school, it means you've achieved, you've done well so far. And you are a role model already to the folks behind you, to the little kids who don't know what they want to be when they grow up. But you know what? There are very few kids who say in 5th grade or kindergarten or somewhere in there, hey, I want to be a patent lawyer when I grow up. But you know what? Maybe you can convert some of them, but nevertheless, many kids would say, you know what? I want to be an inventor when I grow up. I want to start my own company when I grow up. There's lots of folks, and we need more folks to think that way. So go talk to people. And I think, A, that's a great service to the country, but also a lot of fun.
And for the engineering side?
Yeah, for the engineer side, first, you can always go to law school. Just kidding. Well, I was an engineer and then I went to law school, so it's definitely a career path if you're interested. But you are likely the next inventors and the next entrepreneurs. And the work you are about to do and you're doing is so important for the future of the United States. What I would say is you absolutely must, just like you're learning about math and engineering, and I remember taking all those advanced mathematics courses with, I don't know, matrices and differential equations. By the way, I'm just saying these words now. I have no idea what they mean. I also don't know why I took those courses, even though I was an engineer for 4 years. But nevertheless, you have to do all those things. You also should take courses in intellectual property, inventorship, entrepreneurship to the extent they are offered. You cannot be a successful inventor or an entrepreneur without at least thinking about intellectual property protection. Doesn't mean you have to get intellectual property protection for everything you do. It may or may not be appropriate, but you need to think about it from the very earliest stages of your creation. As soon as you come up with something new, think to yourself, do I need patent protection? Do I need copyright protection? Do I need some other type of IP protection? And the reason you need to think about it early is because if you don't, and you later decide that you actually do need protection, you might not be able to get it at that time. Intellectual property rights, if they are not exercised timely, they can be irretrievably lost, depending on the type of right. Patent rights in particular, depending on what you do, you might lose them forever. So think about it. Talk to your professor. Talk to your tech transfer office. Probably talk to Saurabh and make a decision early on as to whether you need this type of protection or not.
Great. Now you discussed a little bit the USPTO studies of diversity in the innovation system, and of course under the Success Act recently and previously under the America Invents Act, that study and that research has suggested that there's a strong leadership role for the USPTO to play in coordinating U.S. government commitments sort of across the executive branch and perhaps beyond. So I'm curious to know what specific partnerships with other government agencies, private sector institutions, do you think could be the most productive going forward?
Yeah, so first of all, let me say the government does play an important role. As I said, this is a three-legged stool, government, industry, and academia. But to be frank, in my view, and again, it's just my view, the government is the least important of those three. The lion's share has to be done to make sure that this is advanced by private industry and by academia. Government, obviously, is critically necessary. It's a component, but we are limited. We only have one patent office. We have 13,000 employees, which is significant, but that doesn't pales in comparison to the resources available by industry and by academia. What government can do is we have the bully pulpit. We have the microphone. We can say things and people hear us. We have the power to convene. We bring people together. And look, this is exactly what we're doing right now. Within government itself, The PTO has a leading role on this. However, plenty of other agencies have a very important role. For example, the Small Business Association, SBA, hugely important for startups and small businesses, obviously. We have a very good partnership with the SBA, and the administrator, the head person of the SBA, is on our national council as well. The National Science Foundation, another organization that distributes about $10 billion, mostly for basic research in universities, but otherwise as well. Every year, $10 billion approximately they distribute, and they play a huge role in the innovation ecosystem. And the head of NSF is on our council as well. There are lots of other agencies that play a role: the Department of Defense, the Department of Energy, NIST, the National Institutes for Science and Technology, various components of the White House, for example, the OSTP, the Office of Science and Technology Policy. We always involve them and have lots of discussions with them on these issues, and there are other components as well. So our role to convene, we're exercising that. We're trying to exercise our microphone. This event is part of that effort. But again, if we're going to move the needle as a country on this issue, companies and industries need to commit that they're going to make a difference. Universities need to commit that they're going to be making a difference. And they need to be specific. There's a lot of talk around town and around the country. Good talk, positive talk. But we need to translate it into actions. Let me give you an example. Women make up about 50% of the population, obviously, and about 50% of jobs in the US economy. In fact, just recently, they went just a tick over 50%. However, women make up only about 28% of STEM jobs. So all of us already, we have a significant gap that needs to be bridged. And it comes down to how many women we graduate from with STEM degrees, and how many women are hired, and lots of other issues. So that's issue number one that needs to be addressed. Companies need to make a commitment to do that. Universities needs to make a commitment to do that. But beyond that, here's a fascinating issue from our report on women inventors. Despite the fact that women hold 28% of STEM jobs, they only make up about 13% of inventors named on patents. In other words, we have women that are educated with the right degrees. They have already been hired by these companies. They're in their seats doing the day-to-day work, and yet they innovate, as measured by US patents, at about half the rate of their male counterparts in the same jobs or similar jobs. Something is happening there. Each company needs to look internally. And by the way, this the ratio that I've mentioned is true across industries, and universities fall in the same category. There are obviously, each one varies a little bit, but we're basically looking at a 2-to-1 ratio of the folks who are already in the seats. What's going on? Each company needs to look at its own pipeline, at its own programs, and make decisions specifically. How are we going to address it? Where are we falling short of the women that we've already hired? Where are we falling short there? And as I said, beyond that, we need to look at specifically, why aren't we hiring at the 50-50 rate in STEM jobs? Why aren't we graduating at the 50-50 rate in STEM jobs? And the like. As I said, a lot of work needs to be done by each individual company or university.
Right. So it looks like we have our first audience question. With the current globalization of IP rights, and by that I think it's meant, the sort of international harmonization framework, as well as U.S. inventors seeking protection abroad. foreign inventors seeking protection of IP here. What should be our nation's role? How do you balance increasing international innovation and prioritizing American innovation so that we're making the pie bigger while still ensuring the U.S. gets the biggest slice, exercises a leadership role?
Yeah, excellent question, and we can spend hours on this. This is a fascinating issue of so many intertwined disciplines and policy issues. First of all, let me say, innovation and intellectual property, one of the beauties of it is that it's always a win-win, in my view. This is not a zero-sum game in any way. In other words, if a foreign country, non-US country, improves its IP system, for sure it benefits that country, but it really also benefits the United States. And this is why we do a lot of work with anyone who's willing to work with us, anyone, to help them improve their IP systems. Even though a particular country might not be that friendly to us on economic terms or whatever. If they improve their IP system, our companies who do business there will benefit. And then their local economies obviously will also benefit because they attract American companies who feel more comfortable now to do business there as well. Same with innovation. If a particular country develops some great new life-saving technology, for example, all humanity benefits, and therefore Americans benefit. And then we learn from them. And then we can see what they've done there, and we can work here to improve upon what they've done there. And then you have global exponential growth of technology and innovation, and everybody benefits. And that's one of the great things about our field. So we work very hard to have international relationships on a bilateral basis and multilateral bases as well. Obviously, as the United States Patent and Trademark Office, our main priority and first priority is to ensure our constitutional mandate, which is to manage the United States patent and trademark and overall IP ecosystem. So the work of the National Council, for example, will be focused on how to create more inventors here in the United States. If I had to guess, though, trying to predict what the council will say when they finish their work down the line, and I'm trying to envision the report they might like, if I had to guess, almost everything they will say in that report will be probably equally applicable in most other countries as well. There might be some differences, but as I said, these are issues of international applicability. So,
great. Actually, a quick follow-up about that question, specifically with respect to how the USPTO plays its convening role, its coordinating role in other countries. Could you say a bit about the priorities both within the USPTO, particularly programs like the IP attaches, who are posted around the world in various strategically important places, and the USPTO's partnerships with, for example, the U.S. Trade Representative and other executive branch agencies? What priorities do you foresee in the international sphere, maybe in the near term?
So, excellent question there as well. Okay, so just for the audience, the professor mentioned our IP attaché program. We have USPTO employees who are stationed at various embassies around the world. We have 13 of them, and they're in places such as Brussels, because that's where the European Union is. We have folks in Mexico City, in Beijing, China, in New Delhi, India, Geneva. Anyway, 13 of them around the world. And they assist American companies with IP issues who want to do business in those areas, and they also interact with the local governments as well. So, in terms of priorities, let me first of all tell you about a major 2020 priority, and that was to ensure that new leadership at WIPO, which is the World IP Organization, which is the United Nations Agency for IP, really important agency, has leadership that actually believes in strong intellectual property rights around the world. And that was a very successful effort that was led by us and a coalition of countries from around the world. It was an amazing thing. We had a coalition of countries, of developed and developing countries from every single continent, and they came together and saw eye to eye when it comes to leadership at WIPO. So that was really an exercise in American leadership and really exemplified how countries can work together in a very positive and constructive manner from around the world. Going forward, I think it's really important. Intellectual property rights right now, Saurabh, are under some attack around the world. It comes at an unfortunate time. In conjunction with the development of critically important life-saving technologies for COVID, there's a question that's being posed across the world as to the balance between strong intellectual property protection and access to these critically important technologies. And there are challenges right now to the IP system or systems around the world based on this. For example, India and South Africa, the countries, have made a request, a proposal to the WTO to suspend certain intellectual property agreements on the international stage to make it easier to overcome IP rights in various jurisdictions. The United States is opposed to that, and other countries as well. The problem is, so this is going to continue into 2021. The United States and other countries that believe in strong IP protection need to attend to this, and we are, and I'm certain it will continue. Obviously, IP should not act as a barrier to access, but anytime we have a conversation like this, we must insist on evidence. We should not be making these decisions without actual evidence. We need to have evidence-based analysis and decisions on issues that are, on all issues really, but something this important, absolutely, is critically important to look at the evidence. So right now, there is no evidence that IP is acting as a barrier to access. To the contrary, there has been more cooperation in the past year when it comes to these critically important technologies than ever before. It's not a coincidence that a vaccine, multiple vaccines, on something this complicated have been developed in and distributed in 9 months. It's not a coincidence, and having a robust IP system across the world does not stand in the way. To the contrary, it enables discussions in the business world and the exchange of ideas in the business world across boundaries to enable the transfer of technology and to enable international commerce. Look at the Pfizer vaccine, for example. It's not just Pfizer, but it's in collaboration with a small company in Germany, BioNTech. They collaborated and worked together to bring that vaccine out to the marketplace. That's just one example. So we obviously need to ensure appropriate access. And that there are many issues to that, well beyond IP. But if anyone is making a suggestion that IP is a problem to access, okay, let's see the evidence. And if there is actual evidence, well, then we have tools at our disposal to ensure the appropriate balance. So if you're asking about, and by the way, USTR does have the portfolio at the WTO for the United States. You're asking about what's down the pipe on these issues, international issues. This is probably the most important one right now.
Terrific. So let's turn now back to the domestic sphere. We've had a mechanism in place in this country for ensuring exactly the kind of balance you're talking about in the university setting, and that's the Baidol Act, which encourages translation of academic research into sort of socially beneficial, practical innovation. And so I'd like to get your thoughts on how universities can commercialize not just the underlying sort of invention into a patent, for example, but complementary assets, trusted knowledge, trade secrets, tangible research materials, and so forth. What education and coordination can the USPTO offer, and does the USPTO offer to universities in these kinds of efforts?
Yep. So first of all, this is, or actually last year was the 40th anniversary of the Baidol Act, one of the most successful pieces of legislation in modern times. And it's done a really good job for its intended purposes and precisely to, among other things, to enable university research, the transfer of technology from lab to market, and the like. Look, I think obviously universities are a fountain of innovation. I mean, it is all the research that goes on in the labs, and this is all you guys do. I mean, the academic research that goes on is phenomenal. The entrepreneurs and the companies you generate is a tremendous source of wealth and development. So we must make sure that gets captured, that actually as much of that reaches the marketplace as possible. It's critically important, as I said earlier, for IP to be a component of all of that effort. Folks need to understand, perhaps counterintuitively, that intellectual property protection enables technology transfer and dissemination of new technologies from the university lab to the market. It's not the other way around. If you have no IP protection, in fact, on average, it is harder to transfer the technology to industry, to private industry. Why? It's really hard and difficult and expensive to build factories and create the product line and the marketing plan and actually put the product to market. So entrepreneurs will be less inclined on average to take over that effort if what the university is offering does not come along with intellectual property rights protections. And therefore, without IP protection of some sort, on average, more technology will die on the shelf or in the lab and not see the light of day. Again, there are exceptions to everything I'm saying. I'm just talking globally. So really important for universities and university labs to have an IP program, and yours does and most do, with a tech transfer office and the like. Well, let me stop there and see if that answered the question.
Well, so Texas A&M, certainly I know from just having spoken with them and worked with them, does have a pretty robust program. I'd be curious to know what education and resources the USPTO and other agencies might offer for universities that want to improve the program the type of program you're describing.
Sure. So the USPTO has lots of education materials. First of all, you can go to our website, uspto.gov, for individual inventors if they want to learn from there on their own. They're available in your local, in the state. Hope is going to come in a few minutes and give you more specifics. But we have a map of the United States. You can click on Texas, and then you will see a listing of our offerings in that state. We have teaching materials. So if a university or a high school or whatever wants to offer an IP-based curriculum, please reach out to us. We have kits that we can help the teachers use to teach their students. We have a Summer Teacher Institute, STI, where again we teach the teachers the workings of IP. They can go back to their schools thereafter and create IP programs. So lots of offerings there. Let me mention one more thing. USPTO is a wealth of data. We have huge amounts of data. We receive 700,000 or so, 650,000 new patent applications a year. And that's just in the United States, and we also have access to other IP offices around the world. That allows for all sorts of data and cutting and looking at the data in a whole host of ways. And it's available for you to use in your research labs if you're interested, or you can also ask us questions and we can help direct you to how to use that data. We also have now created a licensing database. COVID only for now, but if it's useful, we can expand it to other areas of technology. So it's called Patents for Partnership. You can list the patents you have there for this particular technology, list if it's available for licensing, and that enables somebody else out there to look at this and reach out to you if they're interested in licensing it. Or you can look and see what other people have, and you might want to license their technology for your use. So that's one other example. And finally, we work closely with the university organizations such as Autumn and others, and try to have joint efforts and joint programs where appropriate.
Terrific. So another question from the audience, and this is from a student. As an undergraduate engineering student interested in attending law school for patent law, terrific. What specific skills should one look for while still in undergrad? What skills are currently lacking in the intellectual property workforce that will need to be filled in 5 to 10 years?
Well, first of all, your technical skills are important. So if you're in an undergrad engineering program, finish that, do well. And then you'll be in high demand, actually, when you go to law school and then you come out. There's never, there's always a shortage of skilled lawyers with technical backgrounds. Always, no matter what. The demand always outpaces the supply of such attorneys. So I'll say that is important. In terms of skills that you need for law school and beyond, I'll tell you, I was an engineer and then I went to law school. Don't mean to scare any of the engineers. It was scary for me back then, but maybe folks are more sophisticated now. It takes a lot of reading and writing, okay, in law school and as a lawyer. And as engineers in engineering school, at least when I went, we did less of it than folks who had a poli-sci major or an English major or history or whatever. So at least for me, it was a skill I had to polish up and learn along the way. To the extent you can take some additional classes where you will have to read a bit more in a history class or something and write a bit more. That's just helpful. It's not a big deal. It's just a skill that improves with practice. But it's necessary for law school and certainly for being a lawyer. I hope I didn't scare them away, Saurabh.
That was certainly my experience in law school as well. So in just the last few minutes here, I wanted to get your thoughts to return to the National Council's particular interest in diversity and sort of taking a broad look demographically and geographically at the innovation ecosystem. I know the USPTO has already made significant investments in artificial intelligence resources operationally, right, to aid in prior art searching and other aspects of examination. How do you foresee AI technology advancing the Council's aim of promoting and increasing participation of underrepresented groups, particularly when we talk about guarding against biases that can distort AI-based decision-making? That's something that's very sort of carefully studied in the AI literature now. But curious to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, look, the fact is that machines to this day are created and trained by human beings. And unfortunately, if we have biases, as humans, we impart them on our children, and then we also impart them on the machines we create. And the good thing nowadays is that people are aware of this. So lots of efforts are going into making sure that the training of the machines does not result in biased decision making by the machines. For the USPTO, we're looking at a lot of AI tools. I'll give you some examples. The first thing we do when a patent application comes in after just the intake, we need to classify it. We have thousands of classification codes. What's the exact type of technology? That had been done by human beings by hand until just a few months ago. We now have AI technology that's being deployed as we speak, and in a few months it will be fully deployed. And we must make sure that as the examiners use it and train it more, that's done properly. Same thing with respect to artificial intelligence. The use of artificial intelligence for prior art searching. That's more difficult. We're doing a lot of work on that, as well as image searching for design patents and for trademarks. We are exposing the machines to a broad cross-section of examiners. So when we train the machines, probably know our detail program, Saurabh. I think you've done some details when you were here. So some examiners are volunteering to detail themselves into these training sessions where they are actually working, they're examining, but they're working to train the machines. We're making sure that we have a broad representation of examiners that does that work. This is a huge subject, and we can talk about it forever. But we are attending to it. It's the use of AI tools is already here, and it will become much more prevalent in the very near future.
Terrific. Thanks very much. So with that, let me now introduce the Texas Regional Director of the USPTO, Hope Shimabuku, who has been a friend and frequent visitor of our law school, and recently concluded the 5-year mark in her service as the Regional Director. So, Director Shimabuku, please tell us a bit about what the Texas Regional Office is doing these days.
All right, thank you, Professor, and thank you, Andrei, for your wonderful comments. I wanted to spend a couple of minutes and talk about the Texas Regional Office, as well as some of the resources that the USPTO has that can help you along your patent and trademark journey. As Director Iancu mentioned, we have everything listed on our website. So if there's anything that I mentioned here that you cannot remember or you didn't write down fast enough, please feel free to visit our website, and all of that information can be found on there at uspto.gov. One of the things that I wanted to point out is that we do have 1-800 numbers for you if you are having difficulty preparing or applying for a patent or a trademark, or you just had questions just in general. And so we have a trademark assistance center as well as an inventor assistance center that is there, that is available to you, and it's free. It's a 1-800 number, and that telephone number can be found on our website. The other thing is that we also have partnered with organizations around the country to be able to provide pro bono assistance for your patents. And so if you fall below a certain income threshold, you could reach out to that organization to be able to see if you qualify to be able to use attorney assistance. In Texas, we have the Texas Accountants and Lawyers for the Arts. They are physically located in Austin, but you can reach out to them, and especially during this time, you can reach out to them by phone to make an appointment to discuss your patent with them. We also have law school clinics, and one of the law school clinics that we have is at the Fort Worth location, where your Texas A&M Law Center, where Professor V is located. And so you can get student help under the supervision of a patent or a trademark attorney. They will be working with that student to be able to provide help to you if you are looking to apply for a patent or trademark. The last resource that I am going to mention that is actually available to you on main campus is what we call the Patent Trademark Resource Center at College Station. And what that is we have librarians who have been trained with IP knowledge to be able to help you not only search, but also answer some of your basic questions. That particular facility in College Station is located at the Business Library and Collaboration Commons at the university main campus, and they are also available by phone. So please reach out to those resources. We are always available at the Texas Regional Office. We're physically located in Dallas. So if you do have questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or someone else in my office, and we are happy to answer your questions as well. So Professor V, back to you.
Thank you very much. Well, that is our program for you today. This was Innovation and the University, a National Perspective. I'd like to thank you, Director Iancu, and Regional Director Shimabuku for taking the time today. I really enjoyed the remarks. I know our students, faculty, staff, and alumni who are on the call got a lot out of it as well. So thank you both, and Happy New Year.
Thank you so much, Professor. It's been an honor to be with you and the audience. Thank you.
Thanks.